the practice of meditation while using a specific meditation object, like the one that has been used, for example, in Thai forest tradition, typically, starting with Ajahn Mun and also with the Ajahn Chah tradition. The one dealing with, working with the qualities of the Triple Gem, specifically the Buddha. Where the word Buddho is anchored within the mind of the person. And many of these teachers in this tradition, the Arahants, such as Ajahn Mun, Ajahn Mahabua, Ajahn Kao, they have advocated, to name a few of course, there's more. There's also the Ajahn Chah tradition. But to help the meditator not just to focus the mind, but to also be able to penetrate layer by layer, going deeper and deeper and deeper. To bring about a wider scope of understanding, in addition to the calmness that Buddho brings. Of course, someone who has been traditionally trained or having studied or studying the suttas, they would look at this practice of Buddho as something foreign and added. And in many ways it might be fair to say that it is a later addition. However, when you look back to the Kammathānas, or the things that the Buddha encouraged his students to anchor themselves on, the things as in meditative tools, objects of meditation, he usually starts, often in the suttas, with the three aspects, meaning the triple gem, starting with the Buddha, and then the Dhamma, and then the Sangha. Each of these have their own qualifiers or characteristics or terms, adjectives, if you will. So the term Buddho is talking about the first of the triple gem, the first of the three refuges, meaning the Buddha. So you're bringing into mind the quality of the Buddha, the Arahant. So it, in a sense, it encapsulates all the qualities of the Buddha. Itipiso bhagava arahan samma sambuddho vidyacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisadamma sarathi sattha deva manussanam buddho bhagavati. Buddho, that is what these teachers have been encouraging. as it was first encouraged by the Buddha, to have their students anchor their minds on. But it doesn't just serve as a focusing instrument. Just like in the case of metta, for example, if it's not a superficial, simply working on the samatha aspect or the calming aspect without penetrating into the insight, that metta, just like the other Brahma Viharas, but especially metta, can open the doors too, and deeper layers of insights reveal themselves. Now, Buddho is usually correlated with Citta. Over the years, I've had many teachers, and also in the suttas, at least the way that they have been presented to us in the West, specifically I'm speaking about the English translations of it, and commentators have used different terms interchangeably for the mind. So, and some teachers have used the word heart to describe it. As far as its location goes, I mean, roughly speaking, they usually say it's around the middle of the chest. But it's not the physical organ, the heart, the anatomical organ that pumps blood and keeps pumping. That's not it. It's one has to be careful not to identify too much. We're just using these as anchor points temporarily until they take us into deeper layers of understanding of what is going on. Meanwhile, the mind is reaching more and more solid aspects of experience that are more and more refined with their tranquility. So citta. Citta is a word that the Buddha used interchangeably. He was talking about the mind. But in the East, they didn't just point to the head and say that's the mind. You cannot geographically localize it somewhere, in a sense. But at the same time, our mind wants to have things be somewhat conclusive, somewhat tangible, somewhat localized, yes. So coming back to your earlier mentioning of Buddho, whether it's Buddho, whether it's the metta practice that is combined with satipatthana, that's the common denominator, the satipatthana for both. It could be the body, it doesn't matter. It could be the breath, it doesn't matter. Because as one uses, for example, Buddho, Buddh, when on your inhalation, Dho on your exhalation, for example, slowly, obviously the word becomes inaudible. You don't say it with your mouth or your mind even. It's become very subtle. In fact, to the point where the breath becomes so subtle it's undetectable. Meanwhile, the mind is sinking, deeper and deeper and deeper into levels of subtle or levels of calm. It is here where the person starts noticing tiny little fluctuations in the mind. And slowly even sankharas become manifest. How they come to be. You start seeing the 5 aggregates. Arise, sustain themselves, and then vanish. Namarupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. All the time. Coming into being and then dissolving. Coming into being and then dissolving. But one goes deeper than that level. It's just like a submersible or a submarine that goes deep into the ocean. At a certain level of ocean depth, they are expected to see certain types of animals that do not exist on a deeper level, perhaps, or on a higher level, more shallow waters. So as they go deeper, now they're going to find different types of animals, different, subtle. That doesn't mean that they didn't exist. They were, but now they've become manifest. Similarly, the sankharas now show themselves. Why? Because the mind has become so subtle. Again, whether it's metta or buddho, it really doesn't matter. These are just tools that expand the mind, that expand the citta. And if done right, in addition to the person being able to see, for example, the sankharas, their behavior is also changing. The citta is expanding, the awareness is expanding. And penetrative insight is becoming more and more prominent and pervasive everywhere, in every form of experience. Even while looking at the 5 khandhas, or even the 5 Nibbāna, or the hindrances that come through meditation, they also become doorways for more insights to take place. Everything. As if the entire universe, or the living experience around oneself, whatever the 6 senses see and behold, they are revealing themselves, like constantly. To the point where the person stops keeping track, or trying to remember the different insights, and just is. They learn to be more present to whatever's happening. And in sitting meditation, as one goes deeper and deeper, they go into even deeper levels of calm, such as Nirodha Samapatti, or the cessation of perception and feeling, where the breath stops, the subvocal speech completely stops, and thoughts don't reverberate or ricochet in the mind. But while being in it, the person is not aware, obviously, because they are not perceiving or feeling. It is only after they come out of that state, and how they come out usually is the outcome of resolution that they had made prior to sitting as to how long they wanted to sit or they would like to sit in that state. And it is at that point, the mind is so subtle, they can see the sankharas slowly forming. It's like, almost like a robot that was unplugged and you just plugged it in or hit the on button, the power on button. And then you see the lights turn on and then whirring sounds start. One at a time, different parts of the machine almost start to light up and come alive. And then suddenly the subvocal speech shows up, and obviously the breath. And the mind is able to see these things. So Buddho is a tool that can take the mind to deeper levels. But at the same time, it can anchor you, because with some other meditation techniques, it's very, even when a person is advanced, the mind that we're working with can use even a state like upekkha, because as long as you're engaged in life, you're not just sitting in meditation. Even that becomes difficult, of course, but especially when you're engaged, you need to anchor yourself onto something that's a little bit more concrete, a little bit more tangible. That's why Buddho is highly encouraged by teachers to be used to allow the mind to get more focused, because it can be tempting for a meditator to just be in that free form, foggy almost, spread out expansiveness of the mind, whereby they might start thinking that this is it, I've reached Nibbāna, and it's not. You know, one thing that meditators don't appreciate is the further we go into the path, and if we're really, really developing, our tools have to become more refined. Our skills have to be more and more exact. We can't be rougher. We can't be just clumsy as we might have been in the beginning part of or stages of meditation practice. So this is where it gets tempting, where that sense of being so broad, so spread out in one's awareness, refined, yes, but still broad. And you would have glimpses here and there. There would be insights happening almost every hour. And the mind is still moving, trying to read, understand, correlate, perhaps with the teachings in the suttas, or what your teacher has said to you. But those things cannot minimize, undermine the very, very important need for the mind to become even sharper. This is where the emphasis on mindfulness becoming so much more powerful than it has ever been up to this point. Because you're dealing with you're dealing with the most sophisticated, constantly changing, morphing series of tactics played by the kilesas in your mind, in your heart, the defilements. So this is when the battle really becomes personal, when the person penetrates into the citta, the mind, or the heart, where the defilements are really, really kept. That's their like Swiss bank account. They've been hiding in plain sight. But hiding secretly. So the comfort that we get in certain meditative states, so long as it's not Nibbāna itself, arahantship itself, means that our job is not done. Those states are not what we're after. We're after complete cessation of suffering, period. We're not after some state, sublime state of mind, because they're there and they're many. They're more and more subtle, but so long as it's not Nibbāna, meaning the suffering has ended, the person will know for themselves. It's not some jhanic state. It is the complete nirodha, cessation, ending of all suffering in the mind, in the heart. And the only way that could happen is when the defilements are exposed, removed, eradicated, and the asavas, or the contaminants, have completely come apart. The sanyojana, the fetters, have come apart. No stopping until that state is reached. No stopping. Nothing should be seductive enough for you to say, okay, I'm going to pitch my tent, I'm going to end my journey here. Thank you very much, I've reached. When the defilements are festering in one's heart, in the citta, in the mind. So, in a recent talk I've mentioned how Nibbāna is not accidental, and it's not accidental, absolutely. Because I see some students, some individuals out there today who started well, who are really progressing, but then they get to a point where they have relinquished because they have come to believe that they've reached. That's how deluded the mind can be. So using whatever tool, I started with talking about the Buddho or metta, ultimately it's about the drive to reach the goal in spite of everything. Because it is the ending of suffering that the Buddha taught. Not just dukkha, the ending of dukkha completely. And it will not happen, at least in this life, for that person who has given up. Because the citta has not reached the point of unshakability, of liberation. Akupachetu vimutti. So yes, Buddho is a very good technique if the intentionality is strong. And sometimes the person has to refocus their energies, even change the meditation object. Because this is your life, this is your search, this is your quest, this is your experiment. Lord Buddha's arahants, before they became arahants, his students, and they were always testing different objects. So from one stage to the next, the person might have become a sotapanna in one way. Let's say Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana, they became sotapannas very quickly by listening, by listening to a verse from Venerable Assaji. But they didn't just keep on listening to Dhamma talks, expecting themselves to become arahants. Of course, there are people who have become arahants simply by listening, but they had done the work previously. Diligent, hard work previously. They had penetrated deeper layers of the mind previously. So all that was needed was a nudge through hearing a certain verse of the Dhamma. And they kept on, these disciples, they kept on asking each other in their own progress, in their own path to awakening, as to what the other person is using. So they were always experimenting. What tools are you using? Now they didn't just work in a shallow way, superficial way. Try it once or twice here and there, but not penetrate. They would take it deep. They would dedicate months sometimes, or at least weeks, diligently, not sleeping, sometimes not eating. But not every technique was going to work for everyone. However, if you would like to find or see if there was one single common denominator type of a method, we can always go back with certainty to the Satipatthana. Because it is found in everything. If it's a legitimate practice that can trace itself back to the Buddha, it needs to be anchored on the Satipatthana. Because it's a fail-safe system when it comes to Nibbāna. So whether it's Buddho, Metta, Bhavana, the breath, they have to be anchored on Satipatthana. But how it manifests itself, it's like water. Whatever you put, whatever type of receptacle you put it in, whether it's a vase, a bottle, a glass, a plate, a bowl, it will take its shape. So Satipatthana is like that. Blending to the personality, with the personality of the practitioner. But different techniques might feel better suited for one person versus the other. But ultimately, the mind has to become sharper and sharper and sharper in order for Nibbāna to take place. And until that has happened, the quest should not be relinquished. One has to persevere and go all the way to the end. I'll stop here.